how often do you get the opportunity to bribe the chief of police? So I said, I'll call him. So I called him and I was very friendly and laughing with. I spoke a bit of Hindi at the time, so I was like, laughing with him, and we're talking a bit in Hindi and like having some jokes. And I said, look, it's one of my friend's birthdays, and we really want to throw this party. I know these things can be very expensive. If we gave, if we made a $500 US donation, do you think, it'd be okay with you if we had the party? And he said, of course, I want you guys to have fun. I'll come and pick up the cash in an hour. It's very kind of you to make such a nice donation. And so he came and picked up the cash, and we had this massive all night party. And yeah, it was a wild experience to bribe the chief of police, and not something I would ever recommend doing in Australia or the US.
Welcome to the Where Have You Been podcast. I'm your host, Bill Ream, and each week on the pod, I have conversations with incredible guests from all walks of life. Expect to hear funny, crazy, emotional, life-changing, and even sometimes life-threatening stories and experiences that will entertain and inspire you. As always, I appreciate your likes, subscriptions, ratings, and reviews wherever you are listening. It doesn't sound like much, but it truly helps the pod get to the ears of more people who may enjoy it. And check out the website, whybpodcast.com, for links to the socials where you can find pictures from the guests and their stories, and also buy merch if you're so inclined. Now let's get to this week's episode. Thank you for being here. Welcome into another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast. I'm your host, Bill Ream, and of course, as always, I always provide you with really quality guests, and today is no exception. I have another fantastic show in store for you. I have Justin on the podcast today. Justin, if you don't mind introducing yourself, who are you?
Hey, Bill, my name's Justin. I live in the Yarra Valley, which is like in the mountains just outside of Melbourne, Australia. I've had quite an adventurous life, I guess you'd say. I started traveling straight out of high school and spent 10 or 15 years just traveling every year. And at the same time, I've been building up a business called Forest Superfoods, which is one of the market leaders in the health food space in Australia, and is now entering the US as well through Amazon and through some retailers and stuff. And we sell whole food supplements, Australian grown, organic, without fillers and extracts and flavors and other additions. We just try and take them from how they appear in nature and try to provide them to people as close to that as possible.
That's fantastic. Is there like a drying element to get it so that you can ship it, like a flash freeze or something?
Exactly. We use freeze drying, which is ridiculously expensive. But what it does is, and there's actually quite a few studies that support freeze drying now, but freeze drying has been shown to be superior to all other drying processes, because what it does is it takes the food. Usually when you dry a food, there's nutrient loss that happens during the drying process, but freeze drying happens at such a low temperature and so quickly that the nutrients can be preserved, and you basically end up with a dried product which is almost nutritionally equivalent to eating it fresh, which is pretty incredible that technology is able to do that. So we freeze dry, all of our major products.
That's very cool. And do you want to list the website?
forestsuperfoods.com. It's with one R, forestsuperfoods.com. And we're also on Amazon US with a couple of products, but people could buy from our website, and we ship direct to all over the world, including the US. And it's, I think shipping's free if you spend 120 US.
Nice. Yeah. And do you have socials that people can find you at?
Yeah, so we're Forest Superfoods on Instagram, Forest Superfoods on YouTube, and there's a community group with about 7,000 or 8,000 people called Forest Superfoods Community on Facebook, and people could join that if they want to learn more about improving their health naturally and work out what products work for other people, and dive deep into the world of natural health and improving your life just through the foods that you eat.
I think it's really interesting. And so do you have video content on YouTube?
Heaps, yeah.
Yeah?
There's heaps. So there's videos we've got experts that work in our company. So we've got a nutritionist who's been studying nutrition for over 20 years. And so she's a big part of the company. So she's done a whole lot of videos about different products, but also just about we're not just about selling products. Like, we're really on a mission to help people improve their health and their lives naturally. And so there's a whole lot of videos on there about like, how to make healthy, delicious meals, and like how to grow. I've done a lot of videos about how to grow healthy food at home yourself, and we've got lots of videos about like what is lion's mane mushroom and how does it work and when's the best time to take it. And so we try to like, we see our role really as first and foremost an educational role to really help people to understand what's the difference between the synthetic lab grown supplements that most people are selling and the whole foods that we're selling, and also which whole foods could work best for them and how to get more of them into their lives and diet, because too many of us are eating ultra processed foods, and it's not good for our health, and it's also just not good for our mental well-being and our and every aspect of our lives. And so I think the key to really being happy and living a good life is eating as much whole foods as possible. And so we try to help people do that in an easy, fun, and delicious way.
I love that you're taking a holistic approach to it and not just selling products. I think that's really cool.
For sure.
Excellent. So definitely, I'll list everything in the show notes as well, so people can easily find you and have something clickable.
Yep.
But so to jump into travel as we do here, I'm just interested to know, was travel always a thing for you in your life, or is it something that maybe started later on, or how did that work for you?
I think it's a big part of the Australian culture. I think because Australia is so isolated from the rest of the world because it's an island in the middle of nowhere, we there's a big culture in Australia of traveling, and it's very common for most people to go overseas, every year, every second year, because there's a big world out there and we're so isolated. I always had this kind of desire to see the world, and I thought my first real trip was to India, and I wanted to go somewhere that was, Australia's very clean and hygienic and organized and structured, and there's a lot of rules and a lot of bureaucracy. And India's the complete opposite. It's just total chaos. Everyone's driving down the wrong side of the road. Nobody stops at the traffic lights. There's like it's just there's no personal space because there's so many people in such a small area. So like, if you're sitting on a train and there's no seats, people just sit on your lap, and like it's just a completely different. It's the complete opposite of Australia, and so that really kind of intrigued me, experiencing what that was like, living somewhere that was completely different to what I'd always known.
Did it live up to your expectations?
Well, before I went, I didn't really know how different it was going to be. I just thought, oh, India, that sounds interesting, and I was into like, I knew there was a part in the south where you can go to like dance parties and stuff and places. I was very interested in meditation as well, and I knew there's some really interesting meditation like Vipassana meditation, which is 10-day silent meditation courses that come from India. And so I wanted to go there to do that. And I didn't really know what I was getting into before I went. I mean, it wasn't as easy back then as it is now to just jump on the internet and, ask ChatGPT to give you a breakdown of what it's like and what the cultures are like. And so it was a massive culture shock, but I just loved it. It just felt very free and very kind of like chaotic, but in like a really in a way that kind of worked, like a no one's sticking to the lanes, or and everyone's ignoring the traffic lights, and everyone's ignoring all the road rules and everything, but it still seems to work because everyone's ignoring them. Everyone else is aware that everyone is going to be ignoring them, and so you take note of what's going on around you and where people are, and you use your horn a lot to tell people, I'm coming through, I'm coming in front of you, I'm turning, all these kind of things. And so there's because it's like the chaos works because it's something that is normal there. Whereas I think in
Yeah.
Australia, if someone was, you know, driving between two lanes, we would all just like have a breakdown. We wouldn't even know what to do, like we wouldn't. But there, that's just normal. And so, yeah, I was fascinated by it. And of course, there's the rich kind of spiritual history of the place as well. And so it was really interesting going to some places where and meeting some of like the holy men that live there. It's actually a tradition in India that a lot of the Hindu men, once they get to a certain age, they'll retire from their work, sell their possessions, and just walk the streets asking for money and food. And it's this spiritual kind of quest that they go on in that last part of their lives. And you meet a lot of those people, and yeah, it was just wild. I just kept going back, and I'd just started another business then called Happy Cow, which I've still got, which does like like high-end leather handmade fanny packs and stuff, like really cool ones. And they were getting made in India. So I found like a guy there who had like a couple of guys working with him, and they were like hand making all the bags. And so I had an excuse to keep going back. And then I would go back and do some work with them and work on some new designs. And then I would go traveling around the country and go and do the meditation and go and meet the Dalai Lama and go down to like the beaches in the south and just travel around and have a good time.
So you've been there a number of times now.
Yeah, I went there. I think I spent in total about 2.5 years there over like a
Oh my
4 or 5 year
gosh.
period. And there's actually a funny story from there. I was I was staying in the south in this place called Kerala, which is right near Goa, which is like where everyone goes to party and stuff, but it's another beach area. And I was staying there and I'd met some people from all over the world, like some Israelis and some European stuff who were all hanging out. And it was one of the guy's birthdays, and he decided he wanted to throw this massive party for his birthday. And we spoke to like the person who owned the land where we were going to have like this outdoor festival kind of thing. And the guy said, I'm happy for you to have it here, but you have to get permission from the police, because if you don't get permission from the police, you know they're going to come and shut it down, and they're going to give me a hard time, and it's just not happening without their permission. So, and we said, well, how do we get their permission? And they're like, well, you have to bribe them.
I was
And
going to
we
say.
and we said, but you can't bribe police. Like you go to jail or get kicked out, or like we come from countries where you do that. That's a serious offense. And he said, well, that's the way things work here. And so he said, here's the number for the chief of police. Let me know what he says. And everyone kind of looks at each other. And I said, well, how often do you get the opportunity to bribe the chief of police? So I said, I'll call him. So I called him and I was very friendly and laughing with him. I spoke a bit of Hindi at the time. So I was like, laughing with him and, talking a bit in Hindi and like having some jokes. And I said, look, it's one of my friend's birthdays and we really want to throw this party. I know these things can be very expensive. If we if we made a $500 US donation, do you think, it'd be okay with you if we had the party? And he said, of course, I want you guys to have fun. I'll come and pick up the cash in an hour. It's very kind of you to make such a nice donation. And so he came and picked up the cash and we had this massive all night party. And yeah, it was a wild experience to bribe the chief of police, and not something I would ever recommend doing in Australia or the US.
Be careful where you are when you take that
Exactly.
tactic.
Exactly. It's the culture, right? And that's it's the same thing. Like if you're driving in India and you don't have if you're on a motorbike, so you don't have an international license, and they pull you over, they don't confiscate your bike and throw you in jail. You just got to pay them, and there's like a set fee that you pay that goes, you see them put straight in their pocket. That's just for like, that's dependent on what law you're breaking. And so they call it the bakshish, but like the bribing of the police is just a normal thing. And I've actually heard from a number of people when I was over there that people actually pay to become police officers because it's so lucrative.
Oh my
And it's
gosh.
like it's like being a business person. It's like your business that you start. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it was fascinating to have that kind of experience and to see how. And I've no doubt there's just as much corruption in Australia. It's just that we hide it much better. Whereas they go, well, why should we hide it? It's just normal.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, here in America, we become like servers at restaurants because they take tips.
Yeah,
And in India, you become a police officer. I mean,
exactly.
yeah, go figure. So we blew right past the question because you started off so quickly with story, which is great. I'm
Yeah,
happy that we did.
yeah,
But so this is the point where I usually say, Justin, where have you been? And my
yeah,
guests will sometimes they'll list places. You have a pretty extensive list, but
yeah.
you take it however you want to. You want to continue in India or we want to go somewhere else, but where have you been?
So I've been to a lot of places. I spent quite a bit of time in South and Central America, so like Mexico, Peru, and Chile. And I've got a crazy story from Peru as well. Remind me. And then
Well, let's just jump in there and then we can bounce around.
okay, so
I
for
love Peru,
forest.
by the way.
Oh, it's incredible. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. And I had no idea. So I went to Peru because for forest superfoods, we sell camu camu berries, which are like extremely high in vitamin C. So most people take vitamin C supplements, which are made in a lab and contain contain acids and all these like disgusting ingredients. But camu camu berry, 2 teaspoons is your 100% of your RDI of camu camu of vitamin C. So it's like an incredible natural way to get all the vitamin C your body needs. And so it's one of our best sellers. We also sell a product called maca root, which is really good for libido and mood and energy. And so and these both come only from Peru. It's the only place in the world where they are. So I decided to go to Peru to meet with some of the suppliers there and go and see how they grow certain things, and to learn more about the products and to see how things are grown and to build relationships with my suppliers, because I only work with very specific suppliers who do certified organic and do very high end quality, and so those relationships are obviously very important to me. And so I went there to meet with the main supplier I have in Peru, and I spoke a little bit of Spanish because I'd been living in Madrid in Spain for a couple of years beforehand. And so I spoke a little bit of Spanish, but when I got there, I didn't realize but the supplier spoke zero English. Like every time he'd spoken to me, he must have just used like some translation program, because he didn't speak what like I don't even think he said hello in English. Like he couldn't speak a single word of English. But
Wow.
anyway, we meet up and we managed to get by, and we talk, and I tell him I want to go see how the products are grown. He said, well, now's not a good time to see how maca's grown because it's off season, but we can go to the Amazon jungle, see how camu camu grows wild in the Amazon jungle, and also go and visit like a remote tribe that lives in the Amazon. I said, that sounds incredible. Like, let's do that. And so we one morning we got up really early. We went down to the dock in Lima, and we found a guy there with like a little we call it a dinghy, but just like a little boat that seats like 4 people. There's no roof, there's nothing. It's just like a little metal boat with a motor. We found the driver, we hired the driver, and he starts loading his food on. And I had a look, and he was taking to the tribe like all like snacks and like soft drinks and stuff they don't have there. He had like and he got like a bowl of water for me, and the rest was just all like junk food, like to give away to the as gifts to the people in the tribe. And so we start driving off, and luckily we went at like I think we started at like 6:30 or 7 because it's hot. It's in Peru in summer. It's crazy hot during the day. So we start driving, and we're driving down the Amazon River on this boat, and it's so relaxing. It's so beautiful. The sun's starting to come out. I go, well, we got up so early, I might just have a little nap. So I fall asleep in the boat, and then all of a sudden it gets very I know, because you get used to the sound of the motor running in the boat, and all of a sudden I'm in my brain. I go, oh, the motor stopped running, and so I wake up and I look at I'll remember this so clearly. It was so long ago, and I remember it so clearly. But I looked at my supplier Antonio, and he looked at me like with this fear in his eyes that I've like somewhat like he's about to get killed or something. And then I looked at the boat driver, and he had that same look in his eyes, and I said,
Oh my
"What's going on?" And he says to me, the motor's just fallen out of the boat to the bottom of the Amazon.
God.
And I said, okay. And he said, and our phones don't work because we're in the middle of nowhere. And I said, okay, but you're prepared. Like, we've got backups, right? Like, where are the oars? He said, we didn't bring any oars. And I said, and I said, so what are we going to do? And he said, don't worry. We'll wait for someone to come past. And when another boat comes past, we'll wave to them and they'll help pull us to shore. We'll go up the mountain. We'll use our phones. We'll get someone to come out and bring us a new motor or bring us a new boat or pick us up or whatever. I was like, good idea. So by now it's midday and it's so hot. There's no cover over the boat. We're just sitting in the middle of the water. It's stinking hot. We're sweating. We've got like one bottle of water between 3 of us. And all of a sudden, and the Amazon's quite wide. It must be, I don't know, maybe like at this place, like maybe 70, 80 meters wide. I don't know what it is
Wow.
in, I don't know what it is in miles, but it's super wide. And so we see another boat kind of, because we're just drifting, because we've got no motor, no oars, nothing. We're just drifting. And we see another boat go past, but it's quite a while away. And all 3 of us stand up and start waving our arms at them and saying, help, help, like, we need help. And they looked at us and they waved and smiled and kept going. They
Oh
thought we were just
no.
waving to them, like, hello. And they kept going. And that happened again and again with 2 other
Oh
boats. And then we
no.
didn't. And then because it was the peak time. By now it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There's no one else on the river. It's too hot. No one's traveling at this time. It's just us there. And so
Baking.
baking, like and just like I could feel my skin burning. We didn't have water. Like it's so hot. And I turned to I'm a really strong like I was a very strong swimmer. Like I used to do competitive swimming in high school, and like I'm very comfortable in the water and swimming, and it's something I do for exercise still to this day. And I said to my supplier, I said, look, we need to do something. We can't just sit out here. What is it safe if I jump in the water and pull us to shore? And I tie a rope around my chest and I'll swim us to shore. And he said, that's a good idea. And I said, but is it safe? It's the Amazon. He's like, of course, it's completely safe. There's no problem. I'm like, are you sure? He said, yes, 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 of course, it's safe. So I tie a rope around my chest, dive into the water, and I start swimming over to the closest shore. We get to the closest shore. I stay with the boat. They go walking up the hill, try to use their phones. Their phones still don't work. But then we see, like, 100 meters down, there's like some guys there building like a structure on the side of the road. Like I don't know if it was going to be like a guest house or like a home or whatever. But there's some humans there. We found some kind of civilization. So they speak to these guys, and they made some deal with them, and they managed to borrow one of their boats. So we jump in one of their boats, keep going. We go and see the camu growing on the side of the river, eat some of these fresh camu berries. They're so tangy because they're so high in vitamin C. And then we get to the village where, this remote village, and it was incredible. Like we get to the remote village, and they're just like, they never see people. So they come and welcome us. They're like playing their homemade instruments, and they're like carrying all the stuff for us. And they're like, they take us to their village, and they like hand make all of there's maybe 20 or 30 huts there, and they hand make it with like bamboo and twine and stuff they find in the jungle. And they've got like all these gardens of things they're growing, and like it was an incredible experience. And they said to us, are you guys hungry? And we're like, yeah, we're starving. Like we've been on the water all day. We've had nothing to eat except like chips and lollies and stuff. And they said, okay, well, do you want fish? And we said that'd be amazing. So they go and they cook us fish. They bring it to us, and I look, and this fish has got these massive teeth. And I said, what is this? And they said, piranha. And I said, piranhas eat meat. And they said, yeah. And I said, where's this piranha from? And they pointed to the river. And I said, I was just swimming in that river where the piranhas are. And they're like, yeah. They only take small bites. And I was like, oh, wow. And then after I discovered, there's all these crazy like insects there that, like crawl into your ear and make nests and like crawl into every edifice they can get in. Like it's like swimming in the Amazon is never a good idea. Like
I was gonna say.
There's 1,000 things that will eat you happily for breakfast.
Yeah, and one piranha might take one small bite, but what if there's 20 of them?
Exactly. And then the blood starts, and then and then they start swarming. So it was something that I was glad I only found out afterwards. But like at the time, I think he just went, yeah, it's fine, because we didn't have a choice. Like that was our only means of like getting out of the sun and getting off the river. So that was a wild experience. But then I've also done, and I love the food. I wasn't expecting the food in Peru is incredible. Like the food there was like a mix between, Japanese and like South American food or Mexican food. And it was just everything we ate was just incredible. And so, and the people are so lovely, and I highly recommend going to Peru for anyone that's interested. It's a fascinating place, and it was a really beautiful experience being there, besides almost getting eaten. And And then I've also done like a heap of Southeast Asia. So like Bali and Vietnam and Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, India, of course. The Andaman Islands is a place a lot of people haven't heard of, which is like next to Thailand, but it's part of India. And it's 250 islands, and 8 of them are inhabited. And it's just this wild place. And back when I went there maybe 15 years ago or something, the only way to get there was by boat. So you took like a boat that was meant to take 3 days, but took 7. And you're in the bottom of this boat, and there's like, I didn't have any money. So I just paid for like the normal the normal like class. And so you're in like you go down, you get to your bunk, and there's just like in the hull of the boat. There's just like 200 bunks set up, and you've just got a bunk in there for a week, and there's like cockroaches everywhere and like rats everywhere, and it was just like it was full on, and the food was so disgusting on there. Like I couldn't eat it. So I took my hammock and just set it up on the side of the boat and just sat and swung on the side of the boat, waiting to get there. That was a wild experience as well, going to that place. And there's uncontacted tribes that live on some of those islands. And so I remember once we were like, there's a bus that goes up and down the main island, and some of the uncontacted tribes actually live on the main island. And so we're on the bus, and we're driving along, and the bus driver's going so slow, and then all of a sudden he speeds up. It starts going really fast, and we said, "What happened?" He's like, "The uncontacted tribe are throwing spears at the bus." And so
What?
yeah, and as we drive past, we see all these guys with spears, like throwing them at the bus because they don't know what a bus is. They're just these massive monster driving through their territory, and so yeah, so they just throw. And you're not like the government really protects these people, so you're not allowed to talk to them. You're not allowed to like give food to them. You're not allowed to have any contact with them. But it was wild to see these people in like, they like just a loincloth like over the genitals, and just really angry at the bus as we went past, and yeah, that was a wild experience. But
Yeah.
I've
Was
also
the
done.
rest of the experience there better?
It was incredible. Like it's just the most amazing islands everywhere. You pay, I don't know what it was, probably $10, and they take you to an island for the day, and there's no one on this island. It's like white sandy beaches and like beautiful jungle, and like you just fish and like swim in the water and sit on the beach. And it was like, if you love islands, it's incredible. And I'm pretty sure like now they've opened the airport, so you can actually just fly there from mainland India or even Thailand, and then you just kind of go island hopping. And yeah, it was incredible. I'm sure it's a lot more developed now than it was back then, but it's the Andaman Islands was really somewhere special, somewhere very different that a lot of people don't go, particularly because it's hard to get to.
Sure.
And then I spent a lot of time in Thailand as well. And one time, one time when I was in Thailand, I'd met up with these local people, and because the Thais love playing pool, like snooker pool, and I was playing with some local people in a bar one time, and we became really friendly. And they told me they were going to like a local wedding in a village the next day, and did I want to come? I said, of course. That sounds incredible. Like I travel for those experiences where I can get off the beaten path and have some wild adventure, and really experience the local culture and really experience like what those places really are like, not what the tourist areas are like. And
Right.
so this invitation was like something I was so excited for. So I jumped at it. So I got on the back of one of their motorbikes the next day, and we drove out to this little village, which was maybe like 2 hours out of Bangkok. And we get there, and it's this tiny village. There's like 6 huts. Like there must be 10 people, 15 people that live in this village, but they're setting up this massive stage. Like this stage was like uh, was for like a major concert, like a huge stage, hundreds and hundreds of chairs. They were cooking all this food. There were like all these women sitting down on the ground, and they were just like chopping vegetables and chopping meat, and like dozens of women, and like they were just making this huge thing. And I was like, I said to the people, like the people I was there with, I was like, oh, when you said wedding in a little village, I thought you meant like, there's gonna be 10 or 15 people and like very intimate. And they're like, no, 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 everyone from all the surrounding villages are coming. This is like a massive event, this wedding. And I was like, okay, cool. And so we hung around there, and then eventually it got started, and everyone's sitting down, and before you eat, there's like the formalities, like the speeches and whatever. And so like we're sitting down, and everyone's doing their speeches. I didn't really understand a word, but they're all doing the speeches and stuff. And then they start doing so we're sitting, because because me and one other guy who was also a mate, where the Westerners, the people from overseas have come to visit. The people look different to everyone else. We're like the official guests. They set us right in the middle, in the front, and we're watching this. The mother of the groom is doing this traditional dance on stage while the musicians are playing and stuff. Very traditional Thai dance, and she looks at me in the eyes, and she starts motioning for me to come onto the stage with her. And I'm like, no way. Like, are you crazy? There's like hundreds of people. Like, I don't know how to do traditional Thai dance. I don't know how to do normal dancing, let alone traditional Thai dancing. No, thank you. And the people, and then she comes down off the stage and starts trying to pull me up onto the stage.
Oh my god.
And I was like, no, 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 like choose someone else. And the people that I was there with said, no, no, you have to go. She's the mother of the groom. Like, it's extremely rude for you to say no. Like, you have to go dance with her on the stage. And they were like, I think they were as embarrassed as I were, because they were like, we brought this guy and now he's going to do this, like, this embarrassing. So, like, I went, well, it's part of the experience, I guess. So I got up on this stage, just me and the groom's mother, with like hundreds and hundreds of people watching. And I start trying to like mimic her and do these like traditional dancing moves with her and stuff. And everyone's laughing and clapping. They're pissing themselves. Like, the whole wedding thinks it's the funniest thing they've ever seen in their whole life. Everyone's pissing themselves. And then eventually, like, it stops. They go to saying else, and I go down. And anyway, I thought, wow, I've really embarrassed myself. I'm going to be like, no one's going to want to talk to me this whole part. Anyway,
You
turns out
became a celebrity, didn't you?
I became the hero of the party, and all the older guys are coming to me like, wait, like, they're saying we have to do a toast, and they're like making me have a shot with all of them, and they're giving me cigars, and they wanted to like shake my hand, and they want to chat with me, and like it just became like this massive thing, and it was like this incredible party and experience I'd never had before, and it was like, not the kind of thing you could ever organize, and yeah, it was. I still remember that, like, of her, like, going, like, trying to pull me up, and me going no, and like the people I was with going, no, no, you have to go, and I was like, wow, like, yeah, that
I
was,
love that so much because, and one of the things that sort of becomes a common thread on here
yeah,
is some of the guests that I have that have the most incredible experiences are the ones that, whether you're comfortable with it or not, you, like you said, you venture off the beaten path, you talk to people, just start conversations, even if it's other tourists
yeah,
or other travelers, just
yeah.
talk to people because travel becomes so much more when you do just that.
Yeah, well, I think the whole point of travel is adventure and like expanding your horizons and getting outside your comfort zone. And so I think, it's there's no point just going to another place to get out of your comfort zone. You should be putting yourself in those situations, saying yes to as many of those wild experiences as possible, and
Yes.
really take yourself out of your comfort zone. And like, like we're going to Italy in a couple of weeks, and me and my wife and my son, and we've spent the last couple of months trying to learn Italian as much as possible, and doing like
Great.
Duolingo app, and doing like audio books, and reading stuff, and doing everything we can, because by learning the language, even just a little bit, and even just when you pronounce it everything wrong and you make all these silly mistakes and people laugh at you, but like that being able to speak the language helps to break down some of those barriers, and helps to like ignite some of those amazing experiences that most people don't get to have. And we always try and learn parts of language wherever we go. Even if it's just like, please, thank you, and like, can I have the bill or whatever. Like, it's you try to learn different words or phrases every single day we're there and before we go, because I think that really helps to like get off the beaten track as well.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I try to at least learn the basics. Please, thank you. Yes, no.
Yes.
Have a great day. Good morning. And then yeah, like you said, I'll pick up some more, like especially if there's locally maybe some slang that they use or something. I'll try to at least learn that while I'm in
Yeah.
the place. But it makes such a difference, both for yourself and for who you're interacting with. I think it means a lot.
It. And they appreciate it, and
Yeah.
like the idea of like it offends them that you're speaking their language wrong. That's not true. I've never
No.
experienced that in my life. Like,
No,
and
I
even,
mean, reverse it. If somebody comes to you who's not a native English speaker and
yeah.
they mess up some things, they're trying. I don't laugh at anybody for that.
No, no, and and also like for a long time, like I spent many years in Spain, and I never really like I was kind of learning the language, but I didn't speak it, and I think part of that was like I was scared to make a mistake, and I think that's a real kind of that's a massive error on my part, because learning a language or learning anything new or doing anything new, you're always going to make mistakes, and you just need to embrace that as part of the experience and be able to laugh when they laugh at the way you pronounce something. You can laugh as well, like it's great. You get a laugh out of somebody. Like, it's I think the fear of like making a mistake stops way too many of us from doing things that that would improve our lives and that would make
Yeah.
our lives better. And I think that goes for languages as much as any other risks we take. But the only way to really learn a language is to speak it. And I
Yeah.
noticed that when I went to Peru, because I'd learned a bit of Spanish, but going to Peru and being around people who spoke zero English, my Spanish just went crazy within a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's super important to speak the language and to make an effort.
Yeah. One place you mentioned, actually, if you don't mind touching on,
Yeah,
and then we can even jump back into Italy because I love Italy. But
yeah,
you mentioned Laos. I don't know
yes,
really much about it, and I don't know anyone who's been there.
yeah. So Laos, I went there very long. It might have been close to 20 years ago, and it was very underdeveloped. And we just caught a bus from Thailand to go there, and it was just like this backpackers oasis. Like everyone was just getting stoned all the time, and there was just like cheap alcohol everywhere. And I remember there was like these donuts that you would sit on in the water, and you'd go down the river on these inflatable donuts, and there'd be like all these stall holders on either side, and if you wanted to get like a Coca-Cola or like a snack or whatever, you just put your hand up and they pull you over, and then
Oh,
you give
wow.
them a bit of money and they give you the snacks, and then you sit on your donut and eat your snacks or have your drink and continue going down the water. Now, yeah, that was a wild experience, but I think I was only there for maybe 2 weeks or something. But it was, I'm sure it's changed a huge amount in the last 20 years. But it was a really cool place, and another one of those places where there wasn't very many tourists, and the locals were just super lovely and really accommodating and really nice. Lots of seafood and barbecue and kind of fresh, simple foods like that. I want to tell you about how I ended up going to Europe.
Okay.
So the first time I went to Europe, well, on my own without my parents, I just had a massive breakup, which after a 5-year relationship, we just had a very ugly, massive breakup. And I was at home and I was a little bit kind of depressed, not sure what I wanted to do with my life. It didn't really like working and didn't really like, whatever, what was going on, and felt a bit stuck. And my grandmother had died about a year, I think it was 6 months to a year before that. And I was one night, and it's crazy because I still remember, but one night I had this wild, like this crazy dream. Like, when you have those dreams that just seem so real that you wake up and it actually takes you a couple of minutes to go, oh, wait, that was just a dream.
Yeah.
And so I was in like a friend's house that I spent a lot of time in when I was growing up. And there was a massive table there. And I was sitting down at the table, and was sitting down and eating. And then my grandmother came and sat next to me. And I was so happy to see her because I was so close with my grandmother. And we spoke, and I said, what's it like being dead? Or what, I said to her, what's the meaning of life? Like, what's the whole point? And she goes, it's just to enjoy it. You don't have to look too deeply. Like, it's just, make the most of the time you've got. That's what it is. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I'm a bit stuck. Like, I don't know what I should be doing right now. And she's like, I know what you should be doing. You need to go to this place called Nice in France. And then I wake up. And I wrote it down. I wrote down the whole dream. So I was like, there's something significant about this dream. And I wrote down Nice, Nice in France. And I thought, that's not going to be real. I'd never had any interest in going to France in my life. Like, I'm not really interested in, fine wines and good food and like art and that stuff. Like, France had never really appealed to me at all. It was at the very bottom of my list of places I wanted to go. And I thought, surely there's no place like this that actually exists. I'm sure it's just like my subconscious has come up with this weird thing and it doesn't exist. And so I looked it up, and Nice, France,
Yeah.
it exists. It's a real
Yeah.
place. And I thought, and I spoke, and I just spent like, I think I spent that day just going like, how is that possible? Like, I've never had an interest in France. I was sure this place wouldn't exist. And then I have this dream that tells me, like, from my grandma, like the person I would listen to in the world more than anyone else, you're going there. You need to go there. And I was like, well, I guess I got to book a ticket. So I bought a one-way ticket to go to France, made my way down to Nice. I had no money at the time. It's a very expensive place. So I was just staying in like a cheap backpacker thing. And I was like, yeah, it's okay. I just walked around for a couple of days, and I was like, yeah, not really sure what I'm doing here. Like, I'm not really, I'm not really having the best time ever. And then a
Well,
friend
because
of
yeah,
a
and once you got there, you didn't have any direction, right?
no
She didn't.
direction, just
She didn't give you an itinerary.
just go there. And I was like, okay, so I went there, and so I got there, and yeah, I was having a really good time. And I was like, maybe I'll just go home. Maybe I'll go to the UK where my cousin was at the time. I was like, I don't really know what to do. And then out of the blue, a old friend from high school contacted me on on Facebook and said, "Hey, I heard you're in Europe. We're going to this festival called Boom in Portugal. You should come." And I looked it up. It's a 2-week festival on the side of this massive lake, a music festival. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll go do that. So I went and met up with him in Madrid, and he was there with like some other friends from school, and then also like a few Spanish people and stuff. And we went to this festival, and the festival was incredible. Like 2 weeks of some of the best time I've had in my life. It was like music and like incredible installations that were like 12 feet tall, and like all these crazy activities and swimming in the lake and like incredible food. I met there a girl who I ended up getting really close with, and we had a relationship that lasted 5 years. I ended up spending like a lot of time in Madrid, where she was from, and actually bought like, so there was a massive crash around that time in the property market, and prices in Madrid of apartments had gone down 70. I
When was
thought
this?
this was about 12 years ago, I would say.
Okay.
12 or 13 years ago. And Europe property prices had just like the bottom had just completely fallen out. I think it was around the 2007 crash. I
Okay.
think it was 2009, whenever that big crash was.
2000.
Yeah, I think it was around that time. Well, no, it was a few years after that, but the property prices still hadn't recovered in Europe at all. And so I
Okay.
thought, we're going to be here a while. Let's buy an apartment and like, and do it up. So found this really cool apartment in the old city of Madrid in this little suburb called La Latina, which is really cool. There's like the butcher downstairs who's been there for 200 years. And there's like the bar at the end of the street where there's like all the old ladies go to have a beer and a croissant for their breakfast. And like, there's just like this really cool, like cultural place. In Madrid's not really touristy in the same way that like Barcelona and other kind of cities in Spain are. It's more of like, it's far less touristy. So we found this incredible apartment, really big apartment, and bought this apartment, and it hadn't been renovated since, I think it was, the building itself was from 1870, and the apartment hadn't been renovated since at least the 40s. So it was like
Wow.
all these tiny, tiny little rooms, and all like, all these weird paint everywhere, and it was on the first floor. And so I said, and so we'll do a renovation. So we're looking around for someone who could do the renovation for us. And in Spain, the project manager is the architect. They're the same person.
hmm
And so this friend of mine, she spoke to her brother. Her brother said, "I've got someone I went to school with who's an architect who could do the whole project for you." We said, "Great." So we met with him. And like Spanish, how do I say this without being rude? In Spain, there's like a culture of like just do it. Like people there don't really care about the rules very much. It's just like if you get away with doing something a bit dodgy, do it. There's a bit more of that kind of stuff. Whereas for me, I want to sleep at night. So everything I do, I'm like, besides bribing the chief of police, but everything I do, I try and do it completely above board because I don't want the stress of like dealing with, police and council and like, upset customers and everything. So
hmm
you look at my business and you look at like the way we operate, everything's very, very straightforward and honest. And like, this is what we do. This is what the science says. This is why we do this. I try and do everything above board and have the studies and everything to back it up. And it's the same way in the personal life. So like, the first thing I said to this architect was like, if we're going to work with you, I want everything done above board. I don't want anything done illegally. I want everything done with permits. I want everything done 100% to the letter of the law. I don't care if it costs more. I don't care if it takes longer. I want everything done 100% to the letter of the law. It's like, of course. What do you think? Like, of course, we'll do everything completely to the letter of the law. Like, that
hmm
goes without saying. I'm like, great. So we sign the contract. We start working with them. That they start off peeling back. I think there was 9 layers of paint on the walls. Just all the time, just already take it for the wall, expose these incredible bricks that are 150 years old,
Oh,
take
wow.
down some of the internal walls to make like big open spaces rather than these tiny little rooms. And we get about three-quarters of the way through the renovation. So like it's in the middle of the city. So like you can't even have skip bins. So everything goes down in these big bags, like almost like those like landscaping bags, like these massive bags that you'd put like a very developed tree in or something, that can
Yeah.
hold hundreds of kilos of rubble or whatever. And they would put all
Sure.
the stuff in these bags, take it downstairs, they'd get emptied, and then they'd take them back up and put more rubble in, more paint, more plaster, timber, whatever. One day, one of the locals one of the people in the building who lives on the floor above us. We're on the first floor of I think it was 5-story building, who's on one of the floors above, has a look as she's walking past and sees that there's some of the foundations of the building in the bags. And she panics because she's on the fifth floor and these are like, structural. She says it was structural wall. When I didn't see anything structural, but she said it was structural. She panics. She contacts the council and says to the council, hey, this renovation they're doing, is this all above board? Because it looks like they're taking out stuff which is like part of the integrity of the building. And and turns out he'd never applied for a single permit. He'd done the whole renovation without a single permit from council.
Oh, geez.
Council came, they said, we're shutting this down immediately. There's no more building. No one's allowed inside. I sat down with him and I said, what are you doing? I asked, you said you had all the permits. You said you were going to do it. And he even said to me, like, yes, we have the permits. We're starting tomorrow. And he said, he brought his father-in-law, who was like a high-end lawyer in Madrid, and he didn't even talk. He didn't even look at me. It's just his father-in-law talking, going, no, that he did whatever you told him to do. There's no evidence that like you wanted him to do things legally, like just all this ridiculous stuff. And I was like, wow. And it went on for I think 3 years.
Oh,
This
my gosh.
back and forth with council, and to the point where at one point council was talking about taking the property off us. So you didn't do the right thing. We need to go and rebuild ourselves. You will lose the property, and also a massive fine, like hundreds of thousands of euros of fine, all this stuff. Anyway, then we got in engineers. I hired a really good lawyer in Madrid to like handle it all for me. We got the engineers came in and said, no, the structure of the building's fine. They haven't done any of that. So we went back and forth with council again. Eventually, they said, I think we'd broken up. We'd broken up by the time council came back and said no. Okay, everything's fine. You got to pay this €30 fine, and then we're going to close the case. So
Oh,
they did
wow.
that, and but it was just this long, drawn out, crazy thing, and we'd actually done it because he didn't need permits. Well, I worked this out after, but we split into two separate apartments. So because it was one big apartment, the apartments there are usually about 60 or 70 meters squared, and this was 150 meters squared. So we're like, let's split into two apartments. So we did one apartment, which was like where we we're going to live, and one apartment that we're going to rent out on Airbnb because it's in the old city, and there's a few tourists who do come and going to make it into like try and make back some of the money that it all cost. And anyway, and then after all that happened and the relationship broke down, I was like, I just want to sell it. So I just sold it, got rid of it. And because it was two apartments, ended up getting quite good money for it because someone was buying two apartments for, instead of buying one apartment so that we could charge a premium price. But that was a wild experience.
That's terrible.
But
Jeez.
anyway, I was glad it was, the dream worked out in the end because I had this incredible, experience living in Madrid and like going to this incredible festival and meeting all these amazing people. And so like, yeah, when I remember the first few days in Nice, I was like, what's wrong with me? Like you have a dream and then you get on a plane and go to the other side of the world. And like, I was just feeling like a bit of an idiot for like doing it. And then, looking back a few years later, I was like, oh, now I get it. That really like shaped my life in the direction that got me to where I am today.
That's so excellent.
Yeah.
Listen, I guess the moral of the story is listen to Grandma in dreams.
Always listen to grandma, I think is just the moral.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're butting up a little bit against time for you. Do we have time to touch on Vietnam real quick?
Yeah. So I went to Vietnam 4 years ago with my wife and my son, who I think was about 3 or 4 at the time. And it was amazing. Like the food in Vietnam was incredible. Like the fresh fish and all the incredible tropical veggies. And we started in Hoi An, which is like halfway up the coast, and we made our way from. So we flew into Hoi An, and then we made our way down, moving every couple of days or once a week, and we flew out of Ho Chi Minh. So we did that whole kind of like bottom half of Vietnam along the coast, and it's really cool. Just got bicycles everywhere we went and rode around, and like my wife learned how to cook some really cool Vietnamese meals, and we met some really cool people, and we like lots of beautiful beaches, and it was a really nice trip. I mean, I think it's hard traveling with like a really young kid, because I think they don't really understand. They don't understand the point of travel. They're like, "Why am I here? I could be at home with my brothers, with my Lego, with my friends. Like, what's the point of this?" So it was like he didn't really enjoy it all that much, which made put a bit of a damper on it for us. But it was like, yeah, really cool place. People really friendly, and yeah, we really enjoyed Vietnam.
Yeah, and very inexpensive once you're there, right?
For sure. Very expensive and very fresh food and really easy to get around, and some really beautiful Hoi An's like this old city that's got these really beautiful buildings and amazing nightlife and markets, and like yeah, there's just we said next time we'd probably do the north, which is like more of the mountains and stuff. But yeah, we really enjoyed Vietnam.
Excellent. And
Yeah.
again, I know we're cutting it close on time for you. You have some restraints, and so I want to be respectful of that. Are there any last stories that you want to tell before I get into my final five questions and we wrap? Is there anything like you just have to say that was really cool and impactful for you? You've been so many places, and I think what we have to do is probably do this again sometime down the road.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be great. No, I don't. I think Sweden was a really cool country, that I really loved, and there was, it was just like beautiful nature everywhere, and like, very, very like clean and safe, and people really lovely, and amazing food, and this incredible like architecture from hundreds of years ago, and yeah, I really liked Sweden, but I can't really think of any incredible stories from there, but yeah, no, I think we've covered a lot. We'll get off the phone, and I should talk about this story. Should talk about this story. But like, yeah, no, I can't think of anything else at the moment.
Okay. And I'm sure if we dove into a bunch of places, I'm sure this stuff would come to you. But
Yeah,
again, so let's do the final five questions. If anything
yeah,
comes to your mind that you want to share, you're welcome to.
thank you.
So my first of my final five questions is: of all the places in the world that you have been, what's been your favorite meal? And I'll even add the word experience, because I don't it doesn't need to be at a restaurant. It doesn't need to be in
Yeah.
any particular place, but there's just the most amazing meal you've ever had.
Gee, that's such a hard one. My brain first went actually to Vietnam. In the last week we were in Vietnam, we were staying in this beautiful beach close to Ho Chi Minh. I'm sorry, I don't remember what it was called, but we were staying there, and they had this dish on the menu. So there was this beautiful open air restaurant. There was like next to the swimming pool, and like 5 steps from the beach. And they had this fish dish they made, which was like a whole fish, kind of like a snapper, but it was like a local fish they had there, a whole fish that had this incredible like coconut sauce on it with lots of veggies, and it was fried fish, and it was just incredible, and I literally had it every single day.
Nice. And this wasn't a fish that would have eaten you if the roles were reversed.
Exactly. Well, probably, hopefully not.
Very cool. I wondered if you would have went for the piranha being your favorite, but that's
Yeah. No, it wasn't really that. It was. I think it tasted really good because we were starving, but I don't think it was actually that amazing in terms of fish.
okay. So, question two. This is my favorite question of the five, to be
Yeah.
honest. Of all of the places in the world that you have been,
Yeah.
where would you, even given a free trip, free opportunity, you would turn
Yeah.
it down and say no, thank you? Where would you not go again?
This is going to shock a lot of people, but for me, it's Japan. So we went to Japan maybe 2 years ago, and it was probably my least favorite trip I've done. And I know that, like, it's completely dependent on who you meet and where you go and the experiences you have and the mindset you're in and all that kind of stuff. But we just didn't really like it that much. We found like hard to connect with the locals because they're not like a very, the culture's not particularly outgoing or like engaging or smiling either. And we felt like a lot of the time we were kind of intruding on their place and they didn't really want us there as tourists. And a lot of places we went to, we didn't particularly, like the food or find things to do that we particularly enjoyed. Yeah, we went to some incredible, like I'm very much into, because I grow a lot of food and live on a farm. I'm very much into gardens and growing food and flowers and all that kind of stuff. So I went to some like mind blowing botanical gardens and like greenhouse gardens and like always incredible, like very manicured, beautiful gardens. But like the actual trip itself, I don't think I'd go back.
Very interesting. Okay.
Mm,
Do you
yeah.
think part of that was maybe the areas that you went? Would you give another area a chance? I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just curious.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure it was. I'm entirely sure it was because of the place we went and just the experience that we had. But yeah, I would do. I would probably do. We did more of like the south kind of part of it but I would probably do more of the north, like Sapporo and those kind of areas.
Cool. All right. Very interesting. I love that question because I love the answers are so varied and the
Yeah,
reasons are so diverse. So excellent. So flipping that on its head, of
yeah.
all of the places in the world that you have been, where do you absolutely have to go again?
I'm gonna cheat and say South America because I've been there before, but I really want to go to Ecuador. I really want to like. I've just been reading a lot about Ecuador and the like unique creatures that are there that nowhere else in the world, and the amazing like villages that are around Ecuador. And yeah, I'm just fascinated by Ecuador, which is a tiny, tiny little country in South America. And that's kind of, I think next year that's where we're going to go.
I'll let you stretch on that. It's I
Okay,
don't I
good.
won't say it's actually cheating.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Good.
that's cool. But then you can't use it as this as the same answer
Okay.
for of all of the places in the world that you have not been,
Yeah.
where do you have to go?
I stuffed myself by doing Ecuador for that one. I would. I really actually want to go to Switzerland. I want to, yeah, I'm really fascinated by like the mountains there and the culture and yeah, I really love to do Switzerland.
Very cool. Yeah, that's somewhere that I would like to go as well.
Yeah.
My final question before I leave you is pretty simple. You know the answer. Where are you going? What's planned? What's on the docket?
That's an easy one. We're going to Italy in 3 weeks. We're going to spend almost a month, but only in Tuscany. So we're gonna move around every 3 or 4 nights to a new village in Tuscany, and yeah, just explore it and hang out with the locals and eat some incredible food, and yeah, just have a good time exploring these incredible old villages of Tuscany and drinking some good wine and eating some good food.
Real quick question too. When you go to these different places, especially places that grow such unique, different things, are you always
Yes.
looking for different products that you can use in your line as well?
Always. Like
Yeah.
we're constantly looking at different products and meeting suppliers and looking at different foods, and like even when we went to Bali and we are expecting that just to be an easy holiday that's a couple hours from Australia, and we actually found there someone who makes all these incredible natural skincare products like vanilla perfume that's just all natural ingredients, and moringa oils and all these different products. And so we actually started a whole new range of products based on the stuff we found from this new supplier in Bali. So
That's
it's
incredible.
yeah, we're constantly on the lookout for new products, and also because especially when you go to places like Italy, where there's so many centenarians and so many people who are healthy, who are 90, 100, 120 years old, but still healthy and still walking around and still working in the garden. We're always really fascinated by like what are they eating and what's their life like, and that's the kind of stuff that we like to pass on to our audience, because we all want to live long healthy lives and not be fragile towards the end of our lives, but still be healthy and strong and being active and important parts of the community. And so we're going to do a lot of videos and a lot of kind of interviews in Italy to talk to some of these people and really understand what's their secret to living such a long healthy life.
Do you do any focus on green zones? Like there's only so many in the world, right? Where people
Yeah.
consistently live to longer ages.
Well, and Italy's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's really like a lot of the research I've done on that. It's really about eating whole foods, doing getting off your butt every day, and then also having community. It's those three things. And there's a really good article on the Forest Superfoods blog about the three things that you need to live a long, healthy life. And it's just that: eat whole foods, eat foods as close to how they appear in nature as possible,
Yes.
move every day as much as you can, and have community around you. And that's it's I don't think it's any more complicated than that. And that's what you see in the green zones as well.
Yeah. And I don't want to get into it, but have you ever been to Costa Rica?
No, but I would like to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love South America. Everywhere there's incredible. I love Spanish, and I love the food, and I love the energy, the people. Even Chile, you walk around Chile, and like all the buildings are in all these incredible colors, and everyone's dancing on the streets, and like it's just I love the atmosphere of it, and the people have so much life in them, and yeah, it's great to be part of that.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
Yeah.
Justin, this has been fantastic. And again, we didn't touch on at least half of the places I think that you've been in the world. And so but the stories that you told were magnificent. And I love the truth. Like I could feel, there was real feeling and meaning in a lot of those. And I thank you for spending this time with me. It was great.
Thanks for having me on. It was really fun.
Yeah. Again, I'd like to do it again, maybe sometime down the road. We'll be in touch. Okay.
I'd love to.
All
Thanks,
right.
Bill.
Good luck with everything. Good luck with your business and your upcoming travels. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks, buddy. See ya.
And there's another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast in the books. Thank you so much for listening today. It was another great guest with some great stories, as always, and I hope that you will support all of the guests by checking out the show notes and going to their web pages, seeing any socials and projects that they may have going on. And please, again, I'll ask as always to like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really does help to allow the podcast to grow and reach more people, and I appreciate you for doing that. Also, if you haven't done so, check out the website, whybpodcast.com, where you can find blog posts. If you'd like to be a guest, please register to be a guest on the site. And check out the merch page. There's some really cool stuff if you're interested in representing the pod, along with some other cool travel items and apparel that I'm working on every day as well. Join me again next week for another great guest with more incredible stories. New episodes drop every Sunday just after midnight Eastern Time. Until then, thank you for being here, and have a great day.